been working with percents and finding a percent of a number up until this point, and we're going to continue working with that. But we're going to look at not just finding a percent of a number, because when we're finding a percent of a number, we're finding a part of a whole. We're going to also work on, if I give you the whole and the part, can you tell me what percent that is? Or if I give you the percent and the part that that represents, can you tell me what the whole was? So we're going to kind of look at all of that related today. So let's look at an example so that you understand more of what I'm talking about. So this is your first example. 30 is 50% of what number? So I'm going to give you kind of a way to think about this. We know that percents are a part to whole relationship. Because a percent is always a part out of 100. The part is the percentage, and then the whole is 100. And I'm going to set this up like this. Is over of equals percent out of 100. And let me explain to you why I'm setting it up that way. I'm setting it up that way because I would be saying something is part of some whole. And then I can represent that always as a percentage. So that's why percent out of 100 is my last section. So when I look at this, I look at a sentence like the question that's being asked. 30 is 50% of what number? And I look for those keywords, is, of, and I look for the percent. So here's the word is, and the number with it is the 30. And you might be saying, well, why isn't it the 50? Well, because the 50 is the percentage. So 30 is 50%. Where you see the percent, you might think of that's a part. So we could say 30 is part. So that should also make sense why that's an is, why that's a part that would go on top. And then it's part of what number? So we see the of is what we're looking for, of what whole. So when we set this up, we're going to set it up is over of equals percent out of 100. So is, that's going to be our 30, over of, that's going to be our missing number. Of what number? 30 is what percent, so the percent is 50%. So 30 is 50% of what number? So 50 out of 100, because percents are always out of 100. And I can solve this a few different ways. One way that always works, so that I would recommend using it, is we can always cross multiply and divide. So we can always multiply the two numbers diagonal, 30 times 100, and divide by the number that's left. And that gives us our missing number. So if I were to actually solve that, 30 times 100 is 3,000. 3,000 divided by 50 is 60. So 30 is 50% of 60. I want to point out that that also makes sense if I thought about this as a model. It says 30 is 50%. So if we had a model and 50% means 1/2, 50% is 30. And so 50%, 30 is 50% of what number? Then the whole here would have to be 60 because the other piece would have to be 30. So drawing a model here also reinforces what I solved. And that should make sense then. 30 is 50% of 60. And I can go back and write that out. 30 is 50% of 60, and then go back and work it out. Find 50% of 60 and see if it actually does equal 30. And if I were to do that, it does. All right, let's look at another example. 15 is what percent of 50? So is over of equals percent out of 100. So I'm going to box it. Here's the word is, so I have 15 is. The percent is what I'm looking for because it says what percent of 50. So 15 is my is, 50 is my of. 15 is what part of 50? That's what that first section is saying. 15 is what part of 50? And I want to write that as a percentage. I don't know the percentage, but I know percentages are out of 100. This one I could absolutely cross multiply and divide, so I could do 15 times 100 and then divide by 50. But I could also, if you notice, use a scale factor of 2. This one's fairly easy to solve that way. 50 times 2 is 100, so 15 times 2 is 30. So 15 is 30% of 50. So I could rewrite this and say 15 is 30% of 50. If I went back and I found 30% of 50, I could find that by doing 10% of 50 and then tripling it to get 30% of 50. Well, notice 10% of 50 is 5. If I triple that, I get that 30% of 50 is 15. And that matches what my question said, so I can be pretty sure that I'm right then. All right, let's look at another one. 25% of what number is 12? Remember, we're going to set this up by boxing and then by boxing our words and then using is over of equals percent out of 100. Pause for a moment, see if you can fill this out, and when you think you filled it out, hit play and see if you were correct. All right, when I box this, 25 is my percent, and then I see my of what number? Is 12. So 12 is what part of, so that's going to be my x rather, it's going to go here. My of is what I'm missing. So 12 is part of some number, and it's specifically 25% of that number. So 12 over x equals 25 over 100. So when I solve that, I'm going to do 12 times 100 divided by 25 when I cross multiply and then divide. 12 times 100 is 1200, and 1200 divided by 25 is going to be 48. So my missing number here is 48. Now notice I might have also said, well, 25 over 100 equals 1 out of 4, or 1/4. 25 hundredths is 1/4, or 25% is 1/4. And so that's equal to 12 out of what? So 1 times 12 is 12. 4 times 12 is 48. All right, let's try another one. Let's look at this in context. A soccer player scored 12 goals during this season. This player scored on 30% of the shots attempted. How many shots were attempted? So when I look at this, the player scored on 30% of the shots attempted. So 30% of, do we know the number of shots attempted? No, it says we want to figure out how many shots were attempted. So 30% of what number is 12, because they scored on 30%, and that 30% was the 12 goals. So that's the problem we need to do. We're going to need to do is over of equals percent out of 100. So it says 12 is, here's our of, so of what number? Is, so 12 is what part of some number, and it's specifically 30 out of 100 because it's 30%. When we're ready to solve this, we're going to cross multiply and divide. 12 times 100 divided by 30. 12 times 100 is 1200. 1200 divided by 30 is 40. So there were 40 shots attempted. The player scored on 12 out of 40 of those shots. And 12 out of 40 equals 30%. One more example. If 44% of the students in Mrs. Rutherford's class like chocolate ice cream, then how many students are in Mrs. Rutherford's class if 11 like chocolate ice cream? So it says 44% of the students like chocolate ice cream. So 44% of all of the students, well, I want to know how many students there are. So it's 44% of what number is, and then it's 11, because it says 44% like chocolate ice cream, and then it says 11 like chocolate ice cream. So that means that 44% of the class is going to be 11 students. When I go to work this out, remember our way that we format and set this up. 11 is, and then 44%, that's 44 out of 100, is 44% of what number? 11 is 44% of what number? I should be able to see pretty quickly. I can use, and I forgot to box this up here. Here's where my of is, of what number? And then it's 44 as my percent. So now when I solve this, I actually could do 11 times 100 and divide by 44. But hopefully you also see that this one I could solve using a scale factor. So what number times 4 equals 100? We could do 100 divided by 4 to figure that out. 100 divided by 4 is 25. So x has to be 25. So there are 25 students in the class. 11 of them like chocolate ice cream. And so 11 out of 25 equals 44%. There are 25 students in there. The key to doing this is being able to set it up in a statement where you say something like 44% of what number is 11, or 11 is 44% of what number, or something along those lines. And then once you do that, use those key words, the is, the of, and the percentage to set up your proportion, and then use cross multiply and divide to solve it.